let's dive right in and let me introduce you to everybody here. I'm Nisha, the content manager of Profit.co, and I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker today, Baston Gerald. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. He's the founder and the CEO of Profit.co, and he's a thought leader with deep knowledge in strategy execution frameworks like Person, Canry, and OKRs. He's authored 3 incredible books on OKRs. He's also the founder of Aptivo and Siragu. Baston's journey began as a mechanical engineer, and he went on to earn an MBA from the prestigious Wharton Business School. He has an impressive career in strategy and technology over 3 decades. He has led strategic engineering teams at Oracle and Cash Edge. He has done transformative processes at the TVS Group, which earned him the prestigious Deeming Prize for TQM. He is passionate about solving the universal strategy execution challenge businesses face today. He is focused on designing products that seamlessly integrate and execute strategic objectives with clarity and precision. Who better than Baston to share how we can take these lessons from 2023 and turn them into actionable, successful strategies for 2024? Over to you, Baston.
Thank you, Nisha, and welcome everyone. Let's just jump right in. I have a couple of slides that talk about us because we have a mix of our existing customers, users, as well as some of those who are not. So just wanted to give a background as to who the company is and generally just who we are. It's a strategy execution platform. That's basically what Profit.co is. And we focus on these 5 key areas, as you see on the screen: strategy, OKRs, and day-to-day task management, which we call collectively as the business performance canvas or platform or whatever you could imagine yourself for that to be. And then the individual or people performance layer comprised of the employee performance management, employee development, and employee engagement and stuff. So essentially, we are in the business of helping businesses reduce organizational waste and maximize outcomes, strategic outcomes for them. Today, what we will try to cover, is what we call as the end of period reflection and reset process. That's basically the theme of the day, and we'll try to go through them in these 3, buckets of topics. First, I'll cover a little bit about the reflection and reset process. What is the kind of purpose, some background mechanics of it, and then we'll delve deeper into the reflection exercise itself, and then the reset exercise. Before we go there, just a quick warm-up exercise here. When we think about a reflection, the number one object that does that in our day-to-day lives, real lives, is a mirror. And everyone, before you leave your home, you obviously look at the mirror and comb your hair and do whatever. And you trust the mirror, and that's because you know that the mirror is showing everything as is. And a true reflection exercise would be like a rear view mirror for you, which you obviously it's easier said than done, but if done well, it could be like a rear view mirror which points out your both good things and good stuff as well as the bad stuff. A quick detour. If you look at the history of mirrors, obviously a lot of scientific advances happened in this last century. But prior to that, people used to use 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, water and polished stones and metals. And really in the 10th century is when this notion of mirror started becoming mainstream. And as you can see, only in the 19th century, glass sheets were, being mass produced. And 21st century, we know you now have like different kinds of mirror that can actually, you know, show things a little bit closer, a little bit farther, convex, all of that stuff. But anyway, so just wanted to quickly share that short history with you. Now let's jump into the main topic, which is the overview of the reflect and reset process first. A quick question for ourselves. Again, we are not going to do any polls and stuff in this webinar because we have a lot of ground to cover. But what is the business we are in, right? Like if you ask this question, essentially we are in the business of moving mountains. Pretty much most of us who go day in and day out and toil through the day and try to make your business or your department or your function, or even as an individual contributor, the area of your responsibility, you're trying to essentially move the mountain. But let's dig deeper and try to define what that is even further, right? So what that essentially means is, we are all measured, right? Like, every one of us know that, most successful businesses operate with data driven decision making engines, right? So at the top of the hierarchy of things that we look at, it's the KPIs, or you could call them as results in a broader sense. And they could be revenue is a pretty common KPI that pretty much every business measures. And we have some nonprofits, in which case revenue may not be the main KPI, but maybe donors and donations and stuff could be a surrogate to that. But there's like other things like customer satisfaction score and so on and so forth. I'm sure you know all the different KPIs that are relevant for your organization or business. But that's at the top, right? So we are trying to move these KPIs from point A to point B. Now, what do we actually do day in and day out, week in, week out, quarter over quarter, is we take some actions. We plan to, do certain projects, we take some initiatives, we hire some people, train some of our people, and all these are actions, plans, projects, initiatives. You can call them in any way, but we are broadly calling them as actions. And these actions essentially will impact the KPIs that we are talking about. For example, you want to improve your customer satisfaction score. One of the actions you will take is to take all your frontline agents and get them trained in a certain methodology. The other action you might take is to, understand how past interactions have gone and develop some playbooks for your frontline agents based on, the goods and bads, like what went well in previous, situations and what didn't go well, and how do you train, all your agents and bring them up a notch, so that future interactions will become better. And in turn, when they become better, your CSAT, which is the KPI you're trying to move, will also hopefully become better, right? So this is, I'm sure you can imagine, but there's lots of actions you take and, get to move these KPIs. The third component of that is obviously like, okay, who does these actions? It's mostly people, right? Like employees, pretty much. But in some cases, especially, you may use additional tools, AI and other tools which will potentially make your people better at what they do. But for the most part, it's people. So you deploy your resources to perform some actions, which in turn will have an impact on KPIs, right, that you're trying to move. So this is the basic equation we want to establish. Now, let's try to understand, what are we actually trying to do? Like, day in and day out, if you go back, one step, you have people performing certain actions, and there's people with different skill levels, And that obviously impacts the quality and quantity of actions, which then, help you move the KPIs. But essentially, if you do this reflection and reset exercise, let's say once a quarter, or maybe once in 6 months, or once a year, what are you trying to do? You're trying to establish some level of causal understanding. What I'm doing X, and does it result in the appropriate increase or decrease in case of negative KPIs of the target output or target result, right? So if I'm able to impact that in a predictable way, you've got a winner, right? So that's essentially what we are trying to do in these reflection and reset exercises, is to trying to understand the causality, right? Like what levers do you understand well, which you can then manipulate, according to your desire, and what you don't understand well, and what do you need to do further down in the future to understand them well, right? This is essentially what we are trying to do. So maybe, one way to take stock of that is this, right? So you took some actions and there were some results. Let's not try to, put them in like a 1 to 10 scale or anything like that to make it more complicated. But let's just say that, you had, uh, we are calling it low and high here, but let's say, you did actions, you took some actions and you didn't, or you took some actions which were according to your design, and in some cases you took some actions which were not according to what you designed, or not to the quality level of your design, so which is basically on the x-axis here. So low means, maybe no actions were taken, or maybe, no actions that were planned were taken, or maybe actions that were planned were taken, but not to the level at which, you hoped for them to be. And high means you took some good actions, and, the quality was, according to you, high. And so, that's these two segments here. And in terms of the results, it's basically similar. You got, really bad, unexpected, low results. And then here you got good expected results. So these are the, four, it's a 2x2 with 4 quadrants. This green check is a very straightforward, easy to understand quadrant. Your actions were great, high, and your results were high. So you're sitting in a nice quadrant. Obviously, ideally, all of your initiatives and results, fall here, which is not the case. I'm sure you all know that, but that's that. The bottom left is very interesting, but you understand, right? So your actions were not up to the level at which you wanted them to be, but for whatever reason, again, those are things that you can go dig deeper and figure out, but that's that. And the results were also, not up to the level that you expected, which is understandable. Not ideal, but understandable. This top left is an interesting quadrant where you took some actions which either weren't satisfactory, or you didn't take the appropriate actions, but you actually ended up with some good results. This is what we call as the lottery quadrant. So, again, it's great that you end up here. The drill down that you have to do, double click on this, would be to understand what really is going on here, right? There could be multiple potential reasons why you get this. Maybe some external factors influenced this, right? Like maybe, you were expecting to, do like 50 calls a day to, generate 5 leads, but, you didn't do them, but still you got 5 leads a day. Maybe there's some unexpected demand from different quarters and you got them. Maybe some actions you did on other initiatives had an indirect, positive impact on this. Sometimes maybe, you did some work in the previous period and you ratcheted it down in this period, but the work that you did in the previous period is still producing some results, maybe. So all this means is you just have to dig deeper, find out, what actually happened, what's happening, and understand. And the best case scenario would be to actually not do these actions anymore and still get the high, results if you can. But it's not always simple, as you know. But this is one anomaly quadrant, as we call it. This bottom right is the other anomaly quadrant where you put in a ton of effort, according to you, but you didn't get the right results. And this is basically what we call as the potential, wastage that's happening in your business. And I'm sure you can you'll agree with us, but a major chunk of an organization's resources are spent on such initiatives, and you continue to work on them when the impact is not not as expected. This happens a lot. You might have heard Harvard. There was some Harvard stat as well as Gartner stat, which talks about how 2/3 of all strategies fail due to poor execution. That's primarily because of this waste that happens. So go back and understand again that there's a bit of introspection that is needed to figure out, like, okay, so why is the assumed causal effect is not there, right? Like, so okay, we thought that if we do this, we'll get we'll get certain results, and we are not getting. So basically, that assumption or a set of those assumptions are all proving to be wrong, and you got to go back. You still need to get these numbers up, so you may have to change your actions and do whatever, right? So that is a brief background on what is reflection and reset as exercises. And in terms of when you do them, I mean, we have this sort of like a strategy execution calendar, and you can see that there are many other things that are mentioned here in terms of like when do you check in, when do you review and stuff. But then typically, the reflection reset exercise happens towards the last quarter of the month. Last week of the quarter, or the first week of the quarter, right? So typically you do some reflection exercises towards the end of the quarter, and then towards the beginning of the next quarter. We've seen like this happening at different levels in different companies, right? So again, we've not seen a pattern in terms of like, okay, large companies typically do this once in 6 months or once in a year, and smaller companies do it shorter period of time or anything like that. We've seen this across the board. Large companies do it like quarterly, very religiously, and many times in an off-site setting, right? Like you take your key people, and go off on a 2-day, 3-day retreat somewhere, and then do this exercise. It helps a lot in terms of being off the day-to-day distractions, and focus on this quite a bit. It actually helps a lot to, I mean, you're going to work for almost 60 70 days in the quarter. Spend 2-3 days dedicated 2-3 days. We actually in our company, we actually coach a lot of companies, a lot of our business customers. But true to our this thing, we actually have an external coach ourselves. We have somebody else who comes and runs these meetings for us. It's almost like when you are a doctor, you don't treat yourself, kind of thing. We are actually doing this regularly every quarter, and we the entire management team, as well as all the senior leaders who participate in this, always come out with extremely positive mindset. So now let's dig a little deeper into the reflection exercise. And another quick note here: if you have any questions, please feed them into the chat, and we'll try to answer them as we go. But let's dig deeper into the reflection exercise now. So why do we reflect? Like I mentioned earlier, causality is the biggest holy grail, and it's true. but you also do certain other things, like, definitely, I'm not, when I said that certain other things, not meaning to reduce the importance of this, but you got to celebrate success. It is very important to, for people to feel recognized, especially when you're expecting them to go the extra mile, and a small show of gratitude in terms of some tokens of appreciation, right? Like, companies do it differently, some awards, gifts, gift cards, and things like that. But that actually, I put that on at the top just to make sure that it is very important. We don't generally take time to stop and celebrate and acknowledge effort in our day-to-day stuff, like work life, but taking that as a pretty what do you call, defined agenda item during this exercise is very helpful, very good, very helpful. I don't think it needs further explanation. Then we look at, like, okay, what were the gaps, right? Like, so there's sometimes, like we talked about, there's the plan, and then there's the actual. You saw yourself getting to, let's say, a KPI value of $1 million in one case, but you ended up at 800K, and or maybe in some other case you ended up at 1.3 million K. And how did that happen? What happened, right? Like, so basically, second and third point here are all around understanding the gaps, extent of the gap, and then the gap analysis, which leads you into the path of discovering what were the underlying factors, causes that caused this gap. Even when you are spot on, like when your plan and actuals are exactly close, like 95% achievement or 100 or 105% achievement, there are definitely learnings, right? So you want to understand, there could be like micro components underneath that. Like, there could be like 5 components that you had as sub reasons or sub causes that would contribute to the $1 million number, but 3 overperformed and 2 underperformed. So all of those are possible, and that only will happen if you spend. I mean, that only will be understood if you spend the time to understand. If you kind of like glance over it and say, hey, we got the number 1 million, great, and go, then there could be wastages that you're still incurring, and there could be other things which are your tailwinds, which you may be underestimating. So and then the using this learning from successes, technically would be the plan for the next period, but mention it here. So now let's try to go a little bit deeper on this whole causality piece, right? Because the celebration piece is pretty straightforward. Gap understanding, or not understanding, gap measurement is pretty straightforward, right? So those are the first 2 points here. Celebrating is something, you have your somebody like either from HR or your chief of staff have a certain criteria and then prepare for that. Understanding gaps, like measuring gaps, is pretty straightforward. You were supposed to be at 1 and you're at 800K, or you're at 1.3K. So the gap is fine. Gap understanding is, the measurement is fine. Understanding is important. And that's kind of what we are trying to talk about here. If you recall, obviously we have all the different functions like sales function, marketing function, customer success function, departments, and so on and so forth in the company, in the organization. And, some of the initiatives are departmental initiatives, which happen within the department. And some initiatives are cross-functional, right? Like marketing depends on, some work that is done by customer success for them to, produce some results. For example, you want marketing to produce amazing case studies for sales to go and, sell to your future prospects. but our marketing cannot do it by themselves. They need customer success to kind of identify which customer is very happy and who's both willing and happy, right? So they need to be able to come back and give us the case study. So marketing can kind of like write about it and then present it to sales and so on. So as you can see, there's lots of interdependencies, cross-functional initiatives that are there as well. So we call these as, like I mentioned, a set of actions, and we have some results that we planned for, which are, but the output or the result of taking those actions. The idea is to establish some causality. Here we are saying that, okay, so you took some actions and that results in some results that due to the causality that is established. Sometimes the results that you accomplish also impact the future actions that you take, not necessarily in the next period, even in the same period. So there's some causality back as well. Like, you will have, especially in early stages of experimentation, you will have some check built in. So, okay, so the 1 million number is for the end of the quarter, but if I don't get to 300K or maybe a supporting KPI, if that doesn't perform properly, you might have heard of lagging indicators, leading indicators and all, which is a different topic. But while I'm looking at my lagging indicator, which is like $1 million at the end of the quarter, and I'm taking some actions, there may be some leading indicators. Like, for example, I need to generate maybe 5 MQLs in a day or in a week. And if I don't do that, there is potential introspection that is needed within the quarter to make some adjustments. There's no point in, especially agile organizations that we are all, you can't really wait for the end of the quarter or end of the period to take corrective action. So this chain, that the cycle of actions and results is happening within the quarter as well, or within the period as well. Now, how do you reflect as a process, right? Like, so we actually have 3 steps to do this. Now the 3 steps are essentially like proven from from different what do you call exercises that we've done in the past with other customers, as well as pretty well documented in material across the board. The first one is to understand the known knowns, right? Like, okay, at the start of the previous quarter, I'm assuming the reset period is quarter. That's why you'll see all the terminology in this presentation to be just as quarters. But anyway, so you've seen this matrix. It's it's a pretty standard matrix. You have the level of awareness on one side, level of understanding on the other side. So there are known knowns which we are aware of and we understand those, and then the other 4 quadrants, other 3 quadrants have some uncertainty around them, right? Like some things that we know that we don't know, and some things that we don't even know and we know them, which is the bottom right. And then there are obviously things that we don't know that we don't know. So how do you now use this to the next to when you go to the next quarter? You definitely want to understand if there is a movement, internal movement, from these 3 quadrants which have at least some unknown component in them, to the 4th quadrant, which is the target quadrant for us, right? So do we understand more? Do we have some things that which were unclear before in terms of awareness as well as understanding, that is more clear now, is something that you want to look at, right? Like as an exercise, this is very important for you to make sure that your future plan can be based on your increased level of awareness and understanding. So that's the first step. Okay. Next is, I find this pretty interesting. Time travel back and look at where you were. Like, for example, we are almost nearing the end of the year now. You had made some assumptions and made some plans at the beginning of Q4, beginning of the year, just take some time to go back to that particular point and think about like the assumptions that you made, the market conditions that you were aware of at the time, and how things changed and how things impacted, your entire plan and the actual results that you got, right? So this is I mean, I say that, go back to the beginning of the previous period, but some level of reflection of like, okay, both, I mean, conditions would have changed today, but the conditions that were there about a quarter ago or about a year ago, depending on your planning horizon, and looking at them and introspecting them, inspecting them with your new lens will be pretty revealing. Third is this is a pretty interesting story here as well, is to put someone else in your shoes, right? So would you do this? Like, for example, um, I have my mentor, and I would simply say, okay, if it is him in this position, what will he do, right? So one of the interesting stories at Intel with Andy Grove, who's broadly known as the father of OKRs, is that in the mid 80s, Intel faced, I mean, they were in the memory business, as most of you might know, and facing intense competition from the Japanese counterparts, and the costs were falling, and I mean, prices were falling as well. Consequently, margins were shrinking, and there were some tremors, like basically. Uh, I've read situations where Andy himself might have been getting kicked out from the board and whatever, right? So he has this, we put this like a chat conversation here, but basically he had this conversation with Gordon Moore, who's the COO who was the COO of Intel at the time, asking him, hey, if the board replaced you and me and brought a new CEO, what do you think he would do? And Gordon says, without flinching his eye, he'll get us out of memories. And so then Andy says, okay, let's walk out of the office, come back in as the new CEO and COO, and let's just do that ourselves. And the history, right? Like after that, what happened? So this is another way to think about a business situation, right? So basically changing perspectives. You can kind of think of this as a um, more of a general step or idea, right? Like just don't look at it from your own perspective, look at it from somebody else's perspective. Potentially, even think about Steve Jobs and say, okay, what would he do if he's in this position? I mean, trust me, it has helped us quite a bit in many situations. And now let's get on to the reset exercise. Okay, so yeah, there's a question about the known knowns. I think it's like Eisenhower matrix. I'm not sure. It's definitely not us. It's something that we borrowed from the vast trove of information in the net. I think it is. I believe it's Eisenhower matrix. But yeah. So the reset exercise, which is interestingly, just follows this. You have understood the causal aspects of the actions and results that you had in the previous period, and now you want to have a clear, achievable, and potentially aggressive targets for the upcoming period. At this moment, I'll stop and give you this one other point, which I've heard from from a coach, is that if you ask a CEO, okay, what is your ROI? Like, why are you doing this sort of business transformation or business, like this agile business exercise? The answer that he says that he gets from the most involved CEOs is that they have been able to improve the predictability of their results, right? Like, so you have a certain amount of plans that you make for every quarter or year, and you perform the actions plans, and then you get some results, and the gap needs to keep coming down, and that actually makes this exercise I mean, basically that's the payback that you get for going through this kind of an exercise, the reflection and reset exercise. And it's obviously very, very, very useful. You're reporting back to your managers, investors, and stuff like that around like your plans and actuals. And when you are able to have a highly predictable set of actions results, you are able to attract additional investment, double down on results to do better, and so on and so forth. So that's basically the summary of this first point, right? Like, you want a clear, achievable, and aggressive outcome target, and you want them to be pretty clearly correlated from a causality standpoint, and find a way to double down on actions that work and fail fast on actions that didn't, and potentially add some new actions based on learning, right? So these are the 3 steps or 3 aspects of reset. We'll go back to the same actions, results, exercise that we talked about earlier, but with a slight twist here. Again, you have all these different departments, just for context on the, around these actions, results area. So in period 1, you took some actions. We call them A1, and those actions resulted in some results, which we'll call as R1. And we've done some reflections, and we've understood the causality, or at least we've understood that we've not understood, or at least we know that we've not understood in some cases. But essentially, in period 1, this is how you close, and you have some understanding of what went according to plan and what didn't, and so on and so forth. But essentially, how do you start your next period, right? You say that, okay, I did 1 million last year, or I plan to do 1 million last year, last quarter, I did 800K, or I did 1.3K, sorry, 1.3 million, 800K or 1.3 million. But now I want to get maybe, 40% more, 50% more. So you typically set your targets in terms of the same KPI, either increase it or decrease it, depending on the nature of the KPI, as well as your, past experience, right? So, okay, if you planned for 1 million, and if you got like, 100K, that, there's a big overhaul that is needed. If you planned for 1 million and you got 950K or a million point, 1 or whatever, then it requires a different set of treatment. Other actual accomplishment of the target could mean different sets of actions, right? But essentially, the results R1 are revised into results R2, which is what we call as the target, and R2. Now, once you know the results that you desire in the next period, now you will go and look at what actions you got to take. So, okay, so you understood some causality through your reflection in period 1, and that you have to, obviously perform to a revised new target, which usually is higher. And then you say, okay, for this higher level of target, what kind of actions do I need to take, which then becomes your A2. Now, that could mean, additional resources, additional, assets to, make the actions feasible. You may need some new tools. You may need some new people. You may need to expand the team from 5 SDRs to, 25 SDRs, whatever, right? The causality understanding that you gained in period 1 will help you in planning the actions for A2 based on the revised targets for the period 2, with those causes well understood. Now, maybe that's probably not just sufficient, right? So you have some actions that you took in period 1 which didn't yield the right results, and you discontinue them. Essentially, either discontinue is maybe strong, but you want to understand, like, okay, why did they fail? Where was there a problem in the way in which, they were implemented, which, resulted in this cause issue, or were there a problem in the way the actions were designed and planned in the first in the in at first, right, in the first place. So once you look through all of these, then you go to your actions, and then there will be some new actions, right? Obviously, due to your understanding of the market, customers, your own product development, employees, you will have some new actions. You may say, okay, you know what, these guys are very, very lacking in a certain aspect of customer service. So, we need to get them trained on those aspects. So that could be a new action that you might do in A2, which you thought, which you just assumed and took it for granted in the previous period, may become important now. So you have to get to those two, those actions A2, and then supplement them with the resource and other tools and other plans, for the next period. So that's basically what you do in your reset. Let me quickly take a note. So there are a couple of questions. One is like, what optimal period should a team allocate for a reflect and reset process? We've seen them do it in 3 days. We do it in 2 days. But then, that's the only thing that they should do. But again, the point is, it's not like you start the, entire process when you go for these offsites or meetings. There's a lot of preparation that happens ahead of time. Department heads or function heads, and, sometimes cross-functional meetings happen before you go for that session. And then when you go there, you present an initial plan. There's some, iteration that happens to, get to the right level, right? Because you might want to do something in marketing, but customer success may not be equipped to deliver that for you. So then what are you going to do, right? So those negotiations will all happen during those 2-3 days. But prior to that, you will have some, clear understanding. Like, I guess the point that I'm making is, you don't try to start understanding the causality between your actions and results at the beginning of that, reflection, reset, offsite meeting, right? In the 2 to 3 day time that I'm talking about. You will do some work beforehand, and then, validate it during the session, and, typically plan. So that's why we say that it's about a 2-week process, when it is a quarter. But then in that 2-week process, about a 2 to 3 day period, 2 days is sufficient, in my opinion. Completely shut everything down and go and do this potentially in an offsite setting. Is there a tested process for identifying performance gaps during the reflect and reset process? I think identifying is pretty straightforward. There's no tested process. Identifying is pretty clear, right? Like, if you use a methodology like an OKR or, balance scorecard or any other methodology for that matter, the outcomes are tracked regularly with weekly, bi-weekly check-ins. And then the actions are also tracked with bi-weekly check-ins. And, when you see you have a clear understanding of what's your target and what's your actual. And so identifying will be relatively straightforward. The bigger issue is with understanding of the causality. When your target is like 100, and when you are at 50 at this particular moment in time, is that because you had lack of resources, or you did overcome it, or maybe you did everything that you were supposed to do, and you still got the 50% result. Is that is actually your biggest problem. That's what there's no this is where you have to rely on your people. You have to rely on their expertise, their experience so far here, as well as benchmarks that you have outside from peers in the industry, and so on and so forth. That's going to be the biggest aspect of this exercise, of understanding the gap. Identifying is easy, understanding is not easy. All right, so we'll go to the this thing. So, again, we talked about A2 prior. So there's some prioritization that you can do. Again, this is something that is borrowed from the internet. We've just added some things here. So you have effort on the left and on the x-axis, and impact on the y-axis here. Again, try to simplify it with low, high, low, high. So if it is a low effort and high impact, again, lottery quadrant, take it, right? Just do it, get it done. If it is low impact and high effort, just don't do it, right? Just there's no. I mean, I'm sure everyone, especially in the tech industry, is like 300% committed. It's very common for me, like from my Oracle days, we'll say, "Oh yeah, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do this," and then this very common. So figure out and dump these which have low impact and are going to suck your effort. Low impact and low effort is something that typically we call as the continuous improvement bucket. Like in the tech world, in my 25 years of experience, including Oracle, there is a sustaining team that we use to handle customer issues on a regular basis. They'll most likely be able to fix those issues themselves. It might be a small code change here, small code change there, and they'll also do some small enhancements as well. And they'll push that back to the main core R&D team, which does the what we call as the high effort and high impact items, which are like we build new modules, build some new big features, and so on and so forth, which we call as the breakthrough initiative here, right? So this is pretty easy to understand, but you want to prioritize your actions A2 in this, using this method to kind of like at least understand and make sure that again, if all of A2 is not possible, how do you divide and conquer them, and who will do them, right? Now, in terms of the reflect reset exercise itself, there are 4 ways to proceed with actions A2. First is like, let's say you had an action A1 which was completed, and but you still want to continue with that action. We are calling it as KR here, which is key result. So you see that some actions are completed, some actions are not completed, and some actions are completed, which is these 2 columns. And in some cases, you want to continue with the key result, which is this lower 2 quadrants, and the upper 2 quadrants is you don't want to continue with the key result anymore. Key result here, just assume that they are basically initiatives, actions, projects, types of key results. So you have completed a key result, let's say, but then you still want to continue with it, double down. It is working. You want to just continue doing it, right? So in that case, what we call is that you just reset, modify the initial value or start value or baseline value, and then set a new target and continue. So that's the modify and continue quadrant. In cases where you have not been able to get there and get to the result, but now you have a slightly better understanding of the causes, and you want to replace some of the old actions with new actions, and you still want to persist with this KR, key result, then you'll typically extend it as is. When we say as is, typically the target, and you want to kind of like run it for another period and see how it comes out. Now we go to the upper 2 quadrants where you have not been able to do something in this particular case. You've not been able to complete something, but you also think that it's not necessary to work on that anymore based on your learning. You will move it to the backlog. So maybe relevant still, but then not relevant right now. So you just move it to the backlog. And then the last one is like you completed it and you think that you're done and you don't need to work on it anymore. So you just complete and close. So these are the 4 scenarios of reset. Now, once you plan your actions like A2, you did your prioritization using the 2x2 I talked about earlier in terms of the impact and effort, and then now you made it a bit more specific using these 4 scenarios. You might want to cross-check, right? Okay, so let's say that I go from this point to the beginning of next quarter, right, or the end of this current quarter, what assume that I accomplish the results in some case, will I be happy? And if I don't, what are the potential risks or areas where I may have to explain to my boss or super boss, and what would be the situation there. So you want to tighten the target setting process. So you just want to walk out a little bit to the future, and then make sure that if you look back and if you accomplish what you've planned, you'll be happy. And if you didn't accomplish, then you have some kind of a backup plan. So that's basically the whole concept of reflect and reset, guys. So I hope it was helpful, and I hope you all have a great planning session for 2024, and do great things in the upcoming year. I do want to wish everyone a very happy New Year, happy holidays, upcoming holidays, and a happy New Year as well. And if there are any questions, we can answer at this point. There are 6 more minutes.
So
Yeah,
there's
should the
another
entire
question.
team take part in reflecting and resetting simultaneously? It's very, depends actually. Like, it's very hard. Like, we are about 200 people. Obviously, all of them can't do it. So typically, department heads, the champions in the OKR terminology, OKR champions, or maybe the chief of staffs, or the next in lines of the departments, and maybe if it's a big department, a few more representative sub-function heads. So you just have to pick and choose, and make it productive. And you can iterate as well, right? Like, so you do it at the end of this quarter, and when you do it at the end of next quarter, you would have learned a few things, and you can either add some more people or remove some more people, and in a nice way, sort of like also expand the exercise. So question from Despo on the slides. Yeah, I think our team, will definitely be able to share this deck with you. So what are the key focus areas and priorities for the organization as we enter the next OKR period? I think typically this has to start from what your targets, KPI targets, are for the next period. So I'm sure you'll have some targets. You would have had some targets for this period, where you and some new KPIs might emerge, which might be relevant for the next period. So that has to drive on your focus areas and priorities. So let me explain that with a quick example. Let's say revenue is a target. Revenue is a key area for you. Key KPI that you want to focus on. Obviously, sales, your GTM, go-to-market motions, are all focus areas and priorities. Let's say you have the revenue and GTM functions are doing fine, but your employee attrition is a big problem. Then that will become a big priority for you. Or maybe you're lagging behind your competition on some feature areas or product areas. That can become a priority, which essentially will show up in some metric. It will show up in your win rate, or your customer satisfaction score, or your some KPI will point it out for you. Okay, so this is where you are, and this is where you need to be, and you have a gap that you need to kind of like address. So you will push more priorities, basically deploy more people, resources, as well as plans in those areas. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. We hope you had a good time, and thank you so much.
So with this, we come to the end of this very insightful webinar. Thank you, Bastin, for those insights, especially the time travel. I hope it'll stick. And as we move on to 2024, all the best to everybody. Hope this was a very useful webinar for you all.
Thank you.